everyone and welcome. My name is Laura and I am a polyglot currently studying 5 languages, and this is my channel, Languages with Laura, where I share tips on language learning as well as traveling. So I'm really excited for today's video because we're gonna do a little trip itinerary planning with me, and I'm going to share some of my tips on how to create an itinerary for over the seas travel. So I am definitely a person who likes to create itineraries and do research before I travel. That's not to say that I don't like being spontaneous when I travel. I think there is a good balance of doing both, planning activities for you to do so you don't feel when you get there that you don't know what to do or you can't get around, but also allowing yourself to be a little loosey-goosey and do things that come up that you didn't know about, or substituting something that looks more interesting, or if you get invited somewhere, still being able to adjust your trip without being too attached to your plan. So I love creating itineraries. I just always encourage to say, be open-minded about what you may come across during your travels. The trip that I am planning currently, we are gonna go to Europe for about 2 months. So in the beginning of June, we are gonna fly to Greece, spend a couple weeks in Greece with my partner and my parents, and then my parents will fly home and my partner and I will hop on the train and go to Hungary and Prague, Germany, the Netherlands, and Sevilla, Spain, only to end our trip with 2 weeks in Morocco, and then we will fly home on the 1st of August. So it is a long trip. It is not the longest we have been outside of our home country, but it is the longest that we will be moving around and being tourists in other countries. So I'm really excited to plan this itinerary, and it's just going to be so much fun. So first thing to note, there are many different ways you can plan an itinerary. You can go to a website like itinerary.com, or there are a lot of websites with programs that are free, or you can do a free trial, or you can pay for in order to plan your itinerary. You can also use a program such as Canva and create your itinerary using their graphics. I know they have a template for travel itineraries, and so it just basically has the days and each of the hours, and you can fill in what you're going to do, and you can create multiple pages depending on how long your trip is. For this trip, for some reason I'm not completely sure of, I have decided to actually just go basic and simple and go for a PowerPoint presentation. How this works for me is that I am putting maps on each slide of the PowerPoint with various locations and activities that I'm interested in, and I'm putting them in order of what ones are closest together so I can group what activities might be done in the same day or one day after another. Very simple, very basic. It allows me to just take notes about whatever it is that I am looking into doing. Like I said, I can include pictures, images, maps, whatever, and then I am actually color coding the city that it's happening in. So all of Greece is going to be like blue, all of Prague is going to be yellow, all of Hungary is going to be green, whatever. I'm color coding it. You can also do something like this with spreadsheets or just a Google document, whatever you like to do. I've tried various different things, and I really think it depends on how long your trip is, what kind of planner you are, and just what works for you as an independent human being. The other document that I always like to create is a brainstorming space. So a lot of times this is even more simple of, again, either a spreadsheet or a Google document or somewhere where I can just brainstorm all the different things, all of the elements I am looking into, things I want to research. So I have these 2 spaces open on my computer. The first thing when you're actually planning the itinerary is to always figure out what dates you'll be where. If you're just going to one place, when is your flight, when does your flight land, and when does your flight leave. I always like to have a buffer day at the beginning and at the end in order to adjust to jet lag and to explore for the beginning, or to maybe do what I didn't get to on that last day, or have space for this is the day that I'm going to go shopping, or the day that I am going to do my final walk around, or whatever it is I want to do. So it's always good to know when you're going first and foremost, because then you can specialize your research into the time period. Now, surprisingly, the next thing that I like to do is plan the activities. I do this before booking a hotel, an Airbnb, a hostel, wherever it is you plan on staying, unless it's with a friend. I like to do my research of what I'm interested in doing in this place. This way, I can figure out if everything that I want to do is in one area of the city or is along one side. Then I know that's probably where I want to look for an Airbnb later, or a hostel later, or even by looking at where all the attractions are, I can learn a little bit about the neighborhoods. And so what nice neighborhood do I want to stay in, or where has good access to public transportation? Sometimes on Airbnb and hostel websites, they will say that it is close to public transportation, but it's always nice to know what that means, what public transportation it's close to, and will that get you where you want to go. Now, how I research what I want to do for each of these places, I have 3 methods that I use to research. The first one, blogs. I look at other fellow travelers, where they have gone, where they recommend, and maybe where they don't recommend. This is a great way to sometimes see pictures, to get a real life experience from another foreigner, going in and seeing what they enjoyed, seeing what they thought was worth their time. I can also sometimes get tips here about cultural aspects or ticket information if I'm going to somewhere that requires advanced planning for that. However, I always take this with a grain of salt because a lot of these influencers are influencers. What they enjoy might not be the same as what I enjoy. Which leads me to trick number 2, the country websites. Pretty much most countries have a generic website for tourists. I was looking at the website for Prague quite recently, and it made me so happy because it was incredibly useful. They had tourist information, both in terms of cultural trips and attractions to see, and they had it divided up based on different types of attractions. If you're someone who likes art, then it has a list of a whole bunch of art galleries in the city. Or if you like taking tours, then it has a list of all the tours that you can go on. Or if you like seeing architecture, it's got the cathedrals and old churches or old buildings that are available for tourists to see. And that's also probably the best place to get you links to the website of these places, so you can check the hours of operation. You can check ticket prices if you need to book a ticket in advance. You can also figure out public transportation if you need it before then, or if, like for example, because I'm going to Europe, I'm thinking about like renting a bike, renting a Vespa in Spain, like something that would allow me to be more independent on my travel, but nothing as grand as renting a car, because I'm not doing that. And there were some things on these websites that I hadn't seen in anyone else's blogs or videos or recommendations, but it still seemed like something super fun and interesting that my partner and I would love to experience. And like I said, you have all the information there. Plus, you can almost always translate the websites. So I can translate everything into English or into French or Spanish or whatever language I was feeling that day to gain all the information. Then the third trick I have for researching and seeing what's out there, honestly, is open up Google Maps. If you open up Google Maps and you scroll into parts of the city, it will have certain attractions open and available. Google Maps will show me where cathedrals are, where restaurants are, where banks are. They just have these landmarked within the city. And so honestly, just looking around, getting a feel for what's in what direction, you can just nosy around and see what's there that captures your interest. This is how I found like an underground tour for somewhere, and it's something that is probably one of the most exciting things I'm looking forward to on this trip. And I hadn't heard about it anywhere else, and it's something really unique to the city that I'm not going to be able to do on any other trip that I take. So once I have gathered all this research, I'm putting all of this into my brainstorming document. I am putting the names of things, the farmer's market, the galleries, the cathedrals, the whatever. I'm putting in anything that looks remotely interesting onto this document. And that's when I go back to the maps and see, okay, what's close together and what am I most interested in? I start weeding it down to fit in how long I'm going to be there. For example, I'm spending 5 days in each city that we are going to. So what are the most important or exciting things for me and my partner that we want to fit in these 5 days? And then that way too, I can start saying, well, this and this is close together, so we can do that the morning of this day, versus this and this, it's on the other side of the city, so maybe I want to save those for a different day. This is also a great way to keep track of your budget. If you have a budget for this trip, by looking up ticket prices, entry fees, transportation, you can see what attractions are costing you more money versus other attractions. That way, if you're worried about having a tight budget, then you can forego some of the more expensive attractions and focus on some still very fun and exciting, but more affordable attractions. The other thing I will say is my personal preference is to make sure you have a good balance. I don't want to be seeing cathedrals for 5 days straight. I can only eat 3 meals a day, so when it comes to restaurants and cafes, I'm not going to be spending my entire day at restaurants and cafes. So I always like to make sure there's a good mix of various activities, and especially too, this is where looking at the country's website can get you some more specific cultural aspects that you might have missed otherwise, that are very specific to that place and are much more exciting to do. Another thing to take into account is how long you think you'll spend at each place. Now, I'm really getting into the nitty-gritty. If you're a hyper planner like me, then you can keep going on this. But if you want to play it a little more loosey-goosey, just having a list of brainstormings and having a vague idea of where they are can be good enough, so that when you're there, you know, okay, in this side of town, there's this, this, and this. We'll start here, and then if we have more time, we'll go to place B and C. You can play it that way, or you can be like me and look at, okay, it takes about 2 hours to walk through this place, and this other place is about 10 minutes away, so we could probably fit both of those in the morning before lunch. Again, that's getting hyper-focused. You do not need to do that, but that is something that I do think about when I plan for a trip. And then one of the final things I do is actually find a place to stay at night. Now that I know where I'm interested in going, I can figure out where I actually want to stay. This is why I think it's very important to plan your trip pretty much right after you buy the plane tickets, because you buy the plane tickets and the next thing financially and for your own health and safety to do is to find a place to stay. But you want to be smart about it. So I would always say, do your research right after getting your plane tickets so that you can still book where you're going to sleep in advance enough that there are openings and that you can have a pick of where to sleep and you're not rushed trying to find somewhere that has room. But that, again, you know what part of the city or what part of the country or even multiple places. If you decide that it's just too far to travel from point A to point B, look into getting another place to sleep for a couple of nights. You're not going to know that until you know where you want to go. And then there too, when it comes to budgeting, if you know you're spending a lot of money on attractions or you plan on doing a lot of shopping, then you can say, maybe a hotel isn't the way you want to go. Maybe Airbnbs are really pricey in this country. So you can always look into hostels and you can start researching what hostels are in the area and what those sleeping arrangements are like. I can tell you there was one time we did not plan a trip very well, and we ended up getting stuck overnight in a city that we did not plan to. And luckily, there was a hostel that had open space, but that was not a situation I would ever want to repeat. It was very stressful. So knowing where you're going to be, when you're going to be there, so that you can find where you want to sleep in advance, always good. Again, if you're a planner like me, if you like living by the seat of your pants, have at. I just know that I'm not one for sleeping on a park bench in a foreign country. Those are all the tips that I have. I hope you enjoyed learning these tricks and planning my vacation along with me. Like I said, I'm going to many different places, so this was just a small part of what I'm doing and where I'm going. And there are so many different ways you can plan an itinerary. If you have any questions for me or need any advice for an upcoming trip that you may have or want to have, feel free to ask them in the comments down below. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe. Again, I make content based off of traveling and language learning, so if either of those interest you, definitely hit subscribe. And also hit the bell. I will be vlogging my experiences while traveling, so if you are interested in any of the places I mentioned, stick around so that you can see my experiences there. Thank you all very much for watching, and until I see you in the next video, auf Wiedersehen!